Hello and welcome to Odds Premier League Match Day 18, Boxing Day, tips and predictions, probably the most special match day in the season with Liverpool flying towards the title, with Man City falling and falling. Tom Rennie, hello.
Yeah, we're getting to the stage now where we might bet as Man City to lose as a standard bet, but actually it's Everton this week, so not from this week.
Is the new Norwich Man City? Could be.
Yes, guaranteed defeat every week, the new Norwich. I like that. I'm going to run with that moving forward.
Well, be careful with Everton grabbing draws against Chelsea, against Arsenal, so they could be dangerous. Guys, stay with us. Of course, Merry Christmas, as someone is already saying. Let's give you some tips and predictions for this special match day in the Premier League. Don't forget to press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. We have 8 games on Boxing Day, on Thursday, 2 games on Friday, and we start with Man City, Everton, one of the most special games because Tom Rennie said it in our last video, bet back Aston Villa in that one, and they were way better. Man City was lost, hopeless, they lost, Haaland didn't touch a ball, so it's 3 consecutive defeats, 1 win in 12 games. We can keep going with the bad stats. I don't remember, Tom, a big team like Man City crumbling like this, like just falling into pieces in just 2 months. I cannot remember any team.
I mean, the only vague thing I've got that's similar from England is Jose Mourinho during the second spell at Chelsea when they'd won the league, and the following year it just all seemed to fall apart for him to the degree I was at a game at West Ham's old ground. So that's how long back we're going. And he had a row with the celebrity actor and West Ham fan Danny Dyer in the crowd, who is now the near father-in-law of Jarrod Bowen. Weird story, this. But they'd lost that game. They were on a weird run. They were like 10th, and Mourinho got the sack for the second time at Chelsea because it had just capitulated to such a mental degree. But like, not even that Chelsea team, like that Chelsea team winning the league back then, despite the resources they had, was still like a surprise. What's happening to Man City is just, it's wild. Like, it's wild because, like, I mean, looking at this game, right? Everton are on this really weird run. I read out the run to you in the last show we did. It was 0-0, 0-0, 4-0 loss, 4-0 win, 0-0, 0-0. There's every chance Everton can go to City and get a 0-0, which is wild considering Man City have scored so many goals in recent years. But you mentioned Haaland. They can't get the ball to him. Defenses seemingly have worked out how to stop Haaland. The secondary cast of Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva, all off form or unfit or a combination of both. In central midfield without Rodri, they've tried so many different combinations. Nothing seems to be working. They've tried Ederson in goal. He's unwell for this one. So the other keeper, Ortega, is going to come in. He's not been great. In every area, Kyle Walker, who has been, you know, people are really ragging on Kyle Walker now because it's fun. But he has been brilliant, like so good for a decade for Man City and for Tottenham before that. And so, you know, his decline has been very, very sharp. The other side, 𝐻𝐵ARDIOL's a good forward. He can't go back. Ruben Dias is struggling. I mean, everybody, no one's having a good run of it right now. And somebody needs to pull it out of the fire for Man City and do it soon. Otherwise, we aren't just going to be talking about, oh, they're not going to be in the title race. At the moment, they're struggling to keep pace with the top 4 race. They're 4 behind Forest. They are 6 behind Arsenal. They're behind Bournemouth. They're behind Villa. They're in a mix of teams with Newcastle, Fulham, Brighton and Spurs who are a bit like, yeah, we could have a go at the Champions League this year. It's open. Crazy for City to have got into that position. I do think at some point they'll turn it around. I do think the cash taps will be turned on at some point in January to buy at least 2, maybe 3 players to fill some obvious squad and football side deficiencies. But this game's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because Sean Dyche of Everton has never been entertaining. He's never been, I mean, as a dinner guest, I'm sure he would be, but in terms of a football coach, he's never been sort of worth watching. Unless you support that team, there's maybe a handful of games in history that Sean Dyche has managed that you'd think, yeah, I'd watch that. So this is not that, but they've worked out their issues defensively. Jordan Pickford always thought was a good goalkeeper. Branthwaite getting back to fitness after a tough start on his return to the team alongside 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐵𝐻 being strong. Ashley Young is suspended for this game, but before that, he's been very, very good. And, you know, their only real attacking creative player is Dwight McNeil. He continues to be out. And so without that, they're just going to shut this game down. So two things happen here. Number one, you go for a Man City win, and they win it in not a particularly stylish way. So look at Man City win. On top of that, look at the underscore lines, under 2.5, 1-0, 2-0, nervy, formulaic victory. And the other thing I'll pick out here is I like the draw, right? Only because Everton are able to muster draws. And if we get to the 85th minute and City haven't scored, suddenly you're not betting on them. 0-0 is 17. And I'm just highlighting that only because of the Everton run I mentioned earlier. They have got 0-0s in 4 of their last 6 games. So it might be worth a tickle. I'll go City low scoring, but I quite like that. So it might be worth a couple of quid.
We saw it against Arsenal, against Chelsea. Why not? Against Man City, Everton, both teams to score. No, it's a classic also. Last 7 games for Everton. We have Grace going for full-time draw. Another guy gaming going for X2 for Everton. The Toffees to upset the citizens. So it looks like no one trusts right now Guardiola's men. I guess at one point they will win a football game. But in the meantime, why not trying to grab these massive odds? Next one is Bournemouth Crystal Palace, one of the best teams. So right now in England, Bournemouth 4 wins and 1 draw in the last 5 games. What a win and performance in Old Trafford. You will tell me, Tom, also if it was because Bournemouth performance was so good or because Man United was so lame. Because I was watching the game and I thought Man United was really, really, really bad. And now Crystal Palace lost back-to-back games against Arsenal, but before that they were actually in good form.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do Man United later, but I do think that you can't just give a Manchester United manager open training and a free hit for the entirety of the season, because you get performances and results like we got at the weekend. Bournemouth aren't playing like that. They aren't playing like a team that there's nothing on the line. It's open training. We're trying this out. We're trying that out. We're going to get our money anyway. Bournemouth are playing like their lives depend on it. And to get something against Bournemouth right now, I think is very commendable, you know, as it was for West Ham in their last home game. I think to get something against them, credit to you, because they're incredibly difficult to play against. I think that in 𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐸, the centre-half, who scored the first goal in the game against Man United, this 6'4" monster, he's coming from Juventus. Well, he's a Spanish player, but he was at Juventus, right? I mean, that's insane that he's playing centre-half for Bournemouth, but he looks really good defensively and offensively, gangly but in control of himself. Justin Kluivert, I mean, is there a more hard-working player than Justin Kluivert in the league? I don't think so. They keep getting central midfield injuries. They lose 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐻, but then Tyler Adams steps in to kick you off the pitch. You know, I think Antoine Semenyo has been terrific this season. Evan Nielsen's come in and just hit the ground running at centre forward, which, you know, is not easy. Lots of teams have tried to buy a centre forward to replace their outgoing striker, and not many have done it as well as this. So credit to the players, the coach, the setup that bring players in. They brought in the right sort of players for the setup, and it's shown in these performances. You know, the win against Ipswich was never say die attitude. The win against Tottenham was almost total domination despite the scoreline. The draw against West Ham, I mean, West Ham had to dig in unbelievably to get something from that game. And I think the Man United win was one of the best complete performances any team has put in this season. And they're doing it without Senesi, Sinisterra, Tavernier. I mentioned Scott. Incredibly impressive. In terms of Crystal Palace, they're going to have ups and downs because they are a pretty deficient squad. And again, it's central midfield. There continues to be issues. There's no Wharton again for this game. I think 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻 has really struggled to stay fit in central midfield. Will Hughes with the best will in the world. Even Oliver Glasner mentioned it last game. He's an old guy playing in central midfield. He should be coming on for the last 10, not to be starting games and being taken off because he's exhausted. And I think Eberechi might be missing for this as well, which is a big problem. But before the Arsenal thrashing in the weekend and the cup game previous, some really good performances. Mateta is scoring again. That's really important. And I think at the heart of defence, Mark Gay has started playing well again. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 has been really good. And Henderson making lots of saves. So good stuff about Palace, but I do think this will be tough here. So take Bournemouth win at 1.95. I fancy goals at both ends as well because they have leaked a few this season. Bournemouth, thinking about West Ham, thinking about Ipswich, thinking about Wolverhampton Wanderers, conceded goals in all of those games, 3 of the last 5. And Palace has scored in all 5 of their last games in all competitions. So both teams to score, Bournemouth win, look at a Bournemouth win. And if you're picking out a Bournemouth player, make it 𝐸𝐸menyo. If you're picking out Palace, it's Mateta.
2-1 could be a good exact score for this game. The odds for Bournemouth to win, as we can see here, are good enough. Also, Grace is going for Bournemouth to win and both teams to score. Laszlo Nagy, 1x and under 2.5 goals. Next game in West London, Derby, Chelsea-Fulham. Both stadiums are so close by, and they are both doing a great season, but they both drew last weekend. Goalless draw, Chelsea against Everton. As we said, they were coming from 5 consecutive wins, and Fulham against Southampton. I must say, Tom, that I said it in this show. It looks like a smell like a bad game for Fulham after winning and doing great games at Anfield and so other pitches, and then they screw it up when they are playing at home against small teams, but perhaps they bounce back in the derby against Chelsea. Why not?
Yeah, I was surprised by that, mainly because Southampton have been so bad. I take your point on Fulham blowing it away when you think they're going to do well. You know, there's the word Fulhamish, if you've heard of that. Yeah, I'm still surprised because Southampton have been so bad. But anyway, we'll get to them. In terms of Chelsea, first real flat performance for a long time against Everton. We've spoken about Everton on the programme already. They are just killing games off right now with a total lack of adventure in any way. They suck the life out of a game of football, and it's up to you as the opponent to give the game something. And if you haven't got that, then they'll kill it. The West Ham game recently springs to mind, but so does the Chelsea game. They just kill the game, Everton. And Palmer struggled, and Jackson struggled, and everyone struggled to really have an impact on an Everton team that had no interest in playing football. Fulham will, and I think that'll help Chelsea a little bit because Fulham will think they can probably win this match. I think the midfield balance still looks like it needs some work at Chelsea because, Romeo Lavia is a really good player, but I just don't think he's going to have a top career because he can't stay fit. And so the midfield balance of Enzo Fernandez, Romeo Lavia, Caicedo at right back, he steps in, makes it a 3. It worked great. And then Lavia's injured again. Oh, so that's that gone again. So now Enzo Fernandez performance drops. And so, on and on, there are ramifications and further fallout to that. So, I don't know about Romeo Lavia. We'll see how that progresses, but I wouldn't have a great deal of confidence in it. Plus, I think there's a possibility that people have started to go, yeah, give him the ball. Give him the ball and sit ultra deep. And you do that, there is a chance you'll get something against Chelsea. You play a high line and the fullbacks forward, they're going to get you. So you got to see how that goes. In terms of Fulham, look, I still think it's been a terrific season, and I still think there's every chance they finish in the top 8. I think top 10 is almost a guarantee at this point. I think that there are players that continue to play well above themselves. Alex Iwobi, Raul Jimenez, 2 cases in point. I do think that they are still lacking a little bit of creativity, as maybe we saw against Southampton when Emile Smith-Rowe is not quite on it. He's not a consistent, every game, he's going to be your best player kind of guy, Emile Smith-Rowe. And so I'd be thinking about that in January. Is there another creative through lanes, through ball passer they can find to replace him on the field when he's struggling? I know Fulham fans might say Tom Rennie, but he's ancient at this point, Tom Rennie. 35, I think 36 this season. Still a good player, but was never really a Premier League player at his peak, let alone bring him in to charge Fulham towards Europe. I think that could be an issue. In terms of this game, look, I think if Fulham are going to get something, draw is most likely. 3 draws in a row, 1-1, 2-2, 0-0. So if you go for Fulham, look at the draw and look at the group bet 1-1, 2-2. You get 3-3 in that mix as well, but you're really covering your bases on 1-1 and 2-2. I like the draw for Fulham. In terms of Chelsea, my Chelsea bets have remained pretty consistent all season. Chelsea to win and Jackson to score. If Chelsea do anything this season, Nicholas Jackson has been a really significant part of it. One of the top scorers in the Premier League this season. And look at Cole Palmer to assist or score as well.
Okay, both teams to score, by the way, is 1.6. Laszlo is going for Fulham over 1 goal. So it's obvious the both teams to score, or could be in this derby. Next game is a really good one, Newcastle Aston Villa, because two of the best teams in the Premier League. Newcastle qualified last season for the Champions League. Aston Villa are dreaming this season with the Champions League, and both are in good form. Newcastle smashed Ipswich. We saw Isak scoring a hat-trick, and Aston Villa, as we said before, beating City. Duran scoring again, his 4 wins in the last 5 games. This is a very good football game, Tom Rennie.
A few weeks ago, Newcastle's big issue was scoring goals. And we had a conversation here. I forget the game. We were like, yeah, can they get the 2 goals to win the game? I'm not sure. Since that point, 3 against Liverpool, 2 against Brentford, 4 against Leicester, 3 against Brentford, again in a different competition, and then 4 at Ipswich. So the goal-scoring concerns are gone for Newcastle. You add that to the fact that, look, 𝐿𝐵 on his way back. He played a Premier League 2 game, I think, last week. So he's maybe 3 to 5 weeks away from being back in the first team. You put that all together, and suddenly Newcastle look a good prospect again. Bruno Guimaraes playing well. Joe Linton back in midfield. Sandro Tonali finally earning some money. I know it was the Carabao Cup against Brentford, but looked quite decent. Scored a couple of goals. First goals since the first weekend he played for Newcastle at the start of last season before he was banned. So lots of things coming together. And Isak's hat-trick, no surprise to me or anyone watching this that Alexander Isak is starting scoring goals with consistency. He is on the cusp of becoming a world-class player. I hope he does it with Newcastle. If he does, they will be the force in the Premier League that we thought they would be. If he doesn't, then it will be at one of the top clubs in world football. He's that good. He can run at you. He can score past you. He takes the penalties. His finishing is great. He'll do you in behind. He sets someone up. What doesn't Alexander Isak have? A player that should be and is going to be at the very, very top of this game for the next 3 to 5 years. And currently Newcastle have him. Long may they keep him. So lots of positives around Newcastle, not conceding many and scoring goals. Perfect combination of things. 3 wins in a row in all competitions, 2 and 2 in the Premier League. Though it is worth noting in the league, Leicester and Ipswich are going down, flying down. No way either of those 2 teams stay up. So it is just worth noting that. Man City for Villa in the last game, very different proposition. And Villa were fantastic. You know, I think it's telling with Villa and 1 or 2 others that the Champions League expansion was always going to affect the league, as it always has playing European football, if you're not one of those squads that have got 400 players like Chelsea or whatever. And so there's games like after RB Leipzig, they struggled against Nottingham Forest. Still probably could have won that game, but it's happened a few times this season. They have a nice little break into Man City. They're too strong. They're too powerful. They're too organised. They've got too much rotation in different positions. Only Jacob Ramsey, I think, is injured right now. Oh, the defenders are back. The midfield is back. Kamara is back in midfield. They can do the Duran-Watkins swap, all of it. And it came off for a fantastic victory. So it's a tricky one, this. I am going to just shade for Aston Villa because the odds are incredible for an Aston Villa victory, considering the form they've been on at 4.1. Newcastle, overwhelming favourites to win. And so I wouldn't bet on that. If you are going to go Newcastle, you look at Isak to score and Newcastle to win, Gordon to score, Newcastle to win, and both teams to score. Those are your markets. Look at the Forest 2-1 win if you're going to go for Newcastle. But for me, Aston Villa at 4.1 is irresistible considering the form they have been on in the last few games. They've beaten Brentford, they've beaten RB Leipzig, and they've beaten Manchester City. In the Forest game, as I mentioned, could have gone either way. And I think it was probably a foul for the winner that I think Hudson-Odoi scored that game as well. So shade for Villa. If you look at them, I wouldn't even go too complicated. The odds are too good. If you go Newcastle, throw Isak in there, you'll make some money.
Great odds to back Aston Villa, as you say, as Nagy said. He's going for Asian handicap +1 for Aston Villa, so they don't lose by more than 1 goal. A double chance for Aston Villa is 1.96. Great odds to back Unai Emery's men. And another great game at Boxing Day is Nottingham Forest. Tottenham Forest 4th in the standings. Is crazy. We are in Christmas time and they are in Champions League spots. They are the only team in the Premier League able to beat Brentford in their stadiums. Is 4 wins in the last 5 games, and now they are playing Spurs. Always tough to predict. When they win big. When they lose big, as they lost to Liverpool, smashed absolutely 3-6, and the odds are so good for Nottingham Forest, Tom. Although we know that they are better away from home, still are irresistible, in my opinion, these odds for Forest to win.
Yeah, and Tottenham aren't going to go in this game like a traditional away team. They are going to do their Tottenham thing and see what happens. And it's super fun for us, and long may it continue. I'm not a Tottenham fan, and I love watching Tottenham games. I could watch any Tottenham game ever because I just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, their run of form, I'll just read it to you. You mentioned it there, but I'll just do it because it's wild. 3-4 defeat, 1-1 draw, 5-0 win, 4-3 win, 3-6 loss. What's happening? Well, this is like my under 14's nephew's form is like. This is not what Premier League teams' form is like. It's insane.
It's the PlayStation form.
It's PlayStation form, exactly. It's insanity. I mean, let's start with them because I've done it at the top. I mean, look, the injury issues are massive, right? They are massive, and I don't want to, if Spurs fans are watching this, to not have Van de Ven, to not have Vicario, to not have Romero, to not have Davis, to not have Richarlison to a lesser extent. But the defence is the big problem. You can't do what Postecoglou wants without your very best players. And it doesn't work without Van de Ven and Romero, specifically Mickey Van de Ven. You play a high line. There's a reason why they bought the fastest defender in football. And at points, they have admirably covered for the loss of those players. At other points, they have not. And we're in the have-not element of that right now for Tottenham Hotspur. They are conceding loads of goals. They're conceding different types of goals consistently in all these games. And Postecoglou's not going to change it. He isn't gonna. And he's getting some grief right now. Posta no clue, some Spurs fans are calling him, but he does have a clue. You know exactly what he's going to do, and he's going to let the chips fall where they may. And maybe that will end up being a success at the end of the season. Currently seeing them sitting in 11th with 3 defeats in the last 5, 23 points, 8 off Forest. I would say it hasn't been to this degree. It's Europa League or bust, really, for Spurs. In terms of Forest, I mean, my analysis of them remains the same every week because nothing really changes. It's incredibly impressive. The 2 centre-halves, very, very good. The 2 central midfielders boot you off the pitch. The 3 wingers, the 2 wingers, forgive me, and the number 10, Gibbs White. They can rotate. They can exchange. One can come in. One can go out. It could be Dominguez. It could be Hudson-Odoi. It could be Elanga. And even in Chris Wood, he's might have dried up a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but still pivotal for what this team do. Keeper makes a bunch of saves. It's all there for Nottingham Forest. And they are just executing the manual really well, right? And I mean that in a very complimentary way. You know, those teams that get up there, I think of all the David Moyes teams that have nicked top 5 finishes. Martin O'Neill's Aston Villa from a decade ago, maybe 2 decades ago now. How old am I? Like, they just do the basic stuff well. Cross it, head it, win it, don't let them score against you. It's perfect. It's the manual football done with confidence and intensity, and more credit to them for it. So, look at Forest win here. You got to take the Forest win. The odds are ridiculous for a Forest win, considering the form they have been on. 2.5. Snatch your hand off for that. Other things I'd look at here, a both team to score. It's a Tottenham Hotspur game. They are going to score a goal in this match. I know that the Bournemouth game upset that cart recently, but Spurs are going to score. So expect Forest to score at least 2. Look at the over here. Over 2.5 goals in this game and a Nottingham Forest win. And then look at Anthony Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi. They are nicking really important goals at the moment. You combine one of them to score, you're looking at 6 and above for the odds for this game. Wild, considering it keeps on happening. Forest win, both teams score, Hudson-Odoi or Elanga on the score sheet.
Great odds to back Forest. Laszlo Nagi's even going a bit beyond this. -1 for Nottingham. They should pay 3 point something. So it's massive odds. Then next game in St. Mary's, Southampton, West Ham. Good odds to back West Ham, 2.2. In this case, let's see if they are able, of course, to beat Southampton. Drew with Brighton and Bournemouth is 5 points in the last 9. And as we said before, Tom, Southampton, they are going down, but they grabbed a surprising point against Fulham in the last 2 games at home, conceded 5 against Spurs and Chelsea.
Yeah, look, I think the Fulham game may have been their new manager bounce thing. I don't know, but like Ramsdale coming back makes a difference as well. You know, that he's a better goalkeeper than what they've got available to them otherwise. That makes a difference. I think he was their best player on the field against Fulham, so that may well make a difference. Expect West Ham to have lots of shots here. But still, I think, you know, the back line was Harwood, Bellis, Bednarek and Wood. It's not particularly Premier League quality. I think midfield, Aribo and Downs, fine. Beyond Dibbling and Fernandez, I don't see too much that's still going to be in the Premier League next season when Southampton have gone down, Ramsdale as well. But beyond that, playing staff is not great for Southampton. That's been their biggest issue across the season. And the other element here, of course, it's 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐺's first game in charge, sacked at Roma like 5 weeks ago. He's now Southampton manager, replacing Russell Martin. Did Russell Martin have to go? Maybe. If it was a few weeks ago and they had any chance of staying in the Premier League, they would need to win 6 on the bounce, probably, to get back in the mix to stay in the Premier League. I just don't see it, and I certainly don't see it starting here. Don't know what sort of style of play 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐺 would have put into his team in the maybe 2-3 days of training he would have had. But are we going to see him implement that kind of, was it Hellas Verona style he had a few years ago, or the Torino style when he got him into the top half a few years running? Not in 3 days. No way he's going to have done much in 3 days. So they're going to set this up in a more defensive way than Russell Martin ever would have done. That may well help them, because we know West Ham have struggled this season to break teams down and score goals when they've had chances. The Leicester game is the most obvious nadir, where they had 30 plus shots and couldn't score. But even in the last couple of games, look, it's worth noting on West Ham, the last 2 games, despite the kind of names on paper, very tough. Bournemouth away right now. Bournemouth are beating everybody. West Ham got something from it. Brighton at home. I know Brighton are on a tough run, but West Ham are also in a tough spot. They're having a tough season. So to get something from those games, I think is commendable. I don't think it's something I'd give compliments for, but it's commendable. It's unbeaten in 3. It's 1 win and 2 draws. 2 draws against good teams. And they've done well against the bad teams this season, more or less. And I know I said Leicester already. West Ham should have beaten Leicester 10-0. Okay? Let's not give Leicester too much praise for that performance. You know, West Ham should have won that comfortably. And I do think, I don't like 𝐿opetegui's ideas, but at the very least, you can see a team coming together. The back line is now pretty consistent, apart from Mavropanos or Todibo swapping in every game. The rest of it remains pretty much the same. The front line with Nicholas Fulcru, who was diabolical the other day, but he's playing now. So let's play him 3-4 more games, see what we've got. And if he ends up being as useless as he looks, make a change in January, buy the Antonio-like striker they've needed for 5 years that isn't Mikel Antonio. Bowen scoring and playing well. Kuda scoring and playing well. There's something there with West Ham. You can just about make out what they're doing now after a chaotic opening 16, 17 games this season. 𝐿opetegui really didn't get a handle on this for a long, long time. Maybe he has. It's not impressive, but maybe he is. So I still am not betting on Southampton. I'm not going to do that. The West Ham odds here are quite surprising, considering, you know, they're not in the relegation battle. They're the first team, I think, not in the relegation battle, if you see what I mean. They're bottom of mid-table, West Ham. But 2.2, I would take that. I'd look at West Ham winning here in a relatively low-scoring game. So look at West Ham at under 2.5. That's 1-0, that's 2-0. Love the group bet again, which nearly came in for us against Brighton. That's 1-0, 2-0, or 2-1. Brings you to around 4.5. 5, that's quite good for a West Ham victory. And again, they've got goal scorers now, West Ham. So look at Kudus and look at Bowen. Pick one out and West Ham to win. I think you'll make some money.
8 points away from the bottom 3, West Ham, so still far away. Mom Spaghetti, double chance for Southampton, under 2.5 for Hammers. Well, 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐺 was a bit of a disaster in Roma after De Rossi and before Ranieri. With another job in the Premier League is a bit desperate, if you ask me, but let's see what happens. Talking about new managers, Wolves, Man United, this is a proper new manager bounce, what the Wolves had in Leicester. Now, after this win, they are only 2 points away from the salvation, whereas Man United, as we said, and you told us that you were going to analyze how they lost against Bournemouth in a terrible defeat, in a bad performance. Is 3 defeats in the last 4 games in the Premier League for Man United.
Yeah, I mean, look, briefly on Wolves first. They aren't going to go down. The reason they aren't going to go down is Southampton are going down, Ipswich are going down, and Leicester are going down, right? That's the reason that Wolves are going to stay up in the Premier League this season. I think that we don't really know what Vitor Pereira is going to bring us for Wolves in the next few weeks, but there was a real new manager bounce about it all. There was a feeling something had changed. There was a feeling the dice had been rolled, and Leicester City are the most pliant opponents. To hire Ruud van Nistelrooy, it continues to baffle me that Leicester have done that. But anyway, like, they've got goal scorers in Wolves, 𝐿𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐾𝐿𝐿, most obviously. He will score the goals to get them to safety. The issue is defence, and if they can bring in 1 or 2 defenders in the January transfer window, I think Wolves will finish relatively low mid-table, but they'll make it. They'll make it 15th or so. I think they're going to be fine. And you saw, if they can score goals, and if you look at the run of games they've had, they got the 4 against Fulham. Even in defeat, they managed to nick 1 against Ipswich, 1 against West Ham, 3 against Leicester, a couple against Bournemouth. They have goals in them. Defence is the problem. If Pereira can fix that, if the transfer market fixes that, Wolves will nudge their way to safety. For Manchester United, like, what Ruben Amorim has got here is actually quite shocking. Like, I don't think at Wolves the manager would get 10-game free hit. Do what you want. I don't think he would. If Leicester at Ruud van Nistelrooy continue to concede 3-4 goals per game, they'll sack Van Nistelrooy in a few weeks and they'll bring someone else in to see through the final 10 games. At Man United, what they're doing is being allowed because everyone has bought into the vision that Ruben Amorim has sold. And maybe that'll work. Who knows? But it's very surprising that they are just allowing him to just toss these games away like they're nothing. These are games of proper Premier League football, and this is Manchester United, who'd complained for years and years and years that Erik ten Hag was not getting the results they wanted, certainly not providing the entertainment they would have wanted. And now they're just sort of, he's only just come in. It's 10 games, 11 games. He's just playing the formation that he wants. And that's great. Great to have a formation that you want. Do you have the players to do it? No? Stop doing it then. Like, there is a pragmatism to being in management. And maybe start of next season when he's been able to have a couple of transfer windows and bring his players in and get the people he wants and have 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜 up front and have wing backs on both sides and yada, yada, yada. Fantastic. Until that point, you got to dance with the one that brung you. And he isn't doing that. And it's costing them. It cost them against Bournemouth, who looked incredibly well drilled and organised and players knew what they were doing in each position. It cost them against Tottenham Hotspur. It cost them in the game against Nottingham Forest, where Bruno Fernandes was dropping it at their pocket position and finding the underlapping runner. But when Forest read that in the game, it led to, I think, the Gibbs-White goal. Like, they are being read by the opposition because the players are not executing the Sporting Club de Portugal plan to perfection. And because of that, it's costing them. And they'll come out in this game, 3-4-3, and it'll be like, okay. They're just going to do that again? Like, maybe he was the cleverest guy in class in Portugal. In England, he's not. And it might be worth bringing a bit of pragmatism to Man United if they are going to start climbing the table, because climbing the table is what they need to do. A bit like West Ham. They're not in the relegation battle, right? But they're just above it. And being just above it is not good enough for what is one of, if not the biggest wage bill in football. They're not scoring goals. They're conceding too many. And it sort of feels a little bit like, does he know what he's doing? And if they finish in the bottom half this season, long way to go. But if they do, can't blame Erik ten Hag for that. Right now, Amorim has had enough games in charge for us to start to realise, not great this. This game is almost impossible to bet on, frankly. I wouldn't take Wolves only because of how bad their record has been across the season, and I don't take much from the victory against Leicester. So I take Man United to win at 1.95. Goals are going to be the order of the day here, mainly because of Wolves' diabolical defensive record, plus the fact that Man United are playing this ultra-offensive formation. And as last week, though it didn't come off, Diallo is fit. If anything happens good for Manchester United, it's going to be through him. So Diallo to score or assist and Man United to win. But look at the over 2.5, maybe over 3.5 market here. This could be 4-4. This could be 3-0 to Manchester United, or Wolves could nick it 2-1. I have no idea. Chaos is going to reign in this game, so indulge your chaos bets.
Well, over 3 is 2.12, for instance, so it's kind of okay. It pays exactly the same, Man United to win or the double chance for Wolves. In this case, Nats is also avoiding this game. Aníbal, going for Wolves or draw. And the last game we have on Boxing Day is Liverpool Leicester City, quite late, this kickoff to be in the cold Anfield, by the way. But this is kind of a no-brainer if you are betting, Tom. Look at the odds, it's only 1.1, as we were saying, or you were saying. Leicester looks like a championship team week after week. Van Nistelrooy is not improving, and Liverpool is just winning and winning, closer to the title, Tom.
Yeah, still a long way to go, but this is as big a gimme as you're going to get if you're Liverpool, scoring not to goal, 6 against Tottenham, couple against Southampton, 2 against Fulham, 3 against Newcastle. Loads of goals in them. Salah in form, Jota is fit. Luis Diaz scoring again after a bit of a drought. I mean, it's all there for Liverpool. And even with Conor Bradley missing and 𝐿𝐿 missing, they won't feel the impact of that in this game. And in terms of Leicester, I've sprinkled on them a few times in this show, but like, they don't have defensive solidity, and they brought in a manager who seemingly can't coach it, conceding so many shots, not just goals, which is concerning, but shots in games. I mentioned the 30 against West Ham, which they inexplicably won, but it was like 20 against Brighton. It was about 30 against Newcastle. It was about 25 against Wolves. It's like over 100 shots in 4 games. And before that was the 4-1 loss against Brentford when they had Ben Dawson in charge, where they conceded lots of goals as well. So, like, they're going to concede 3 goals in every single game and keep following that trend here. Let's not waste too much time. Liverpool win? Absolutely. Take that up and down as your first tip and throw it in an ACCA somewhere. Liverpool to score 5+ goals in this game is 3.5. That allows a couple of Leicester goals as well. You take that out, you bet 5 or more, 3.5. I'm taking that. And if you look at the handicap market, the most conservative is minus 3.5. That brings you any money, 2.75. This will be 3, 4, 5, 6-0 if Liverpool want it to be.
Well, we have to go over 4 goals to find odds around 2.0. So it's very difficult to find value in this Liverpool-Leicester City. And we have 2 more games for Friday. Brighton-Brentford is the first one. Brighton favorites, of course, because Brentford, they are the worst away team in the Premier League. I guess at one point they will get points away from home, as they lost their first home game of the season against Forest. Brighton, 5 winless games, Tom.
Yeah, and I think that you saw against West Ham on the weekend that this is not the De Zerbi Brighton. Fabian 𝗀𝐿𝐿 is a more pragmatic manager. He is not an ultra football purist. Still of the same sort of school, but they'll scrap. They'll scrap. They'll kick you. I mean, 𝗀𝗻𝐿 𝗀𝗵𝐻 should have been sent off 10 times over in that game. The amount of times he kicked 𝐿𝐿𝐻 was a joke. And then the tackle on Max Kilman. I mean, if we're not going to send people off for challenges like that, we might as well bin VAR completely. So they're aggressive, they're niggly, they're tough to play against, and they have a lot of rotation as well. So when West Ham started to fade in the game, 𝗀𝐿𝐿 saw it and he was like, right, get Minte on, let's get 𝐸𝐸𝐸 on, and they can bring players on who can bring energy. So it is a surprise the goals are sort of dried up, but Evan Ferguson came on at the weekend, not quite fit, not scoring. Danny Welbeck remains out for this one with an ankle problem. 𝐿𝐴 Pedro doesn't score many from open play, so lacking someone to finish the chances they create. And the chances have dropped off recently too, so that's a problem. And defensively as well, I think Adam Webster's been out for much of this season. Lewis Dunk, I think, has struggled for the first Premier League season that I can remember. And changing the goalkeepers, I'm not sure either are particularly strong for Brugge nor Steele. So, like, there are some issues there to solve, and maybe a little bit of investment is required. And, you know, it screams draw, frankly, at the moment with Brighton, because they've drawn 3 of their last 5. And in the games they lost, they probably should have drawn. Fulham, maybe most notably, they gave goals away really softly there. So that's one element. The other element is that Brentford's form has fallen off a cliff. 1 victory in the last 5 in all competitions. That was at home. Away from home, you mentioned it. They are the worst team on the road this season. So, look, I wouldn't be surprised to see a victory for Brighton here. But I just like the odds for the draw, considering that Brighton are just struggling to get over the line at 4.5. So double chance it, Brighton and the draw, but take the draw at 4.5 because the odds are so good. And Brentford, I've said this all season, they should be brilliant away. Don't really understand why they're not. Now they've started losing home games, maybe there'll be a more focus on these away performances. Dig out, grind out a draw, low block against Brighton. Might be unwatchable, but I'd fancy their chance of getting it.
Probably this away home form has to be balanced at one point during the season because it's quite strange. And the last game is Arsenal Ipswich, of course, really low odds to back Arsenal at only 1.1. Finally bounce back after the draws against Everton and Fulham with the 1-5 against Crystal Palace. Ipswich, another home defeat, 4-0 against Newcastle. Would you handicap Arsenal or Gabriel Jesus to score something like this?
Yeah, I mean, you have to handicap here because there's nothing worthwhile in terms of Arsenal victory if you don't. I mean, briefly on Arsenal, you know, 𝐿𝐵𝐴 Jesus coming back, you mentioned it there, scoring goals. That's going to make a big difference to them. He's not really been a goal scorer much of his career. So coming in now and doing it might be extremely useful. I think Bukayo Saka is missing for this one, which always is a huge blow for Arsenal. He's so important to everything they do. But the good news for them is I think Ipswich Town are a pretty pliant opponent to face in a game like this. And in terms of Ipswich, Sam Morsey suspended. Beyond that, nothing particularly of note of players that are missing. The victory at Wolves was a blip in a good direction. Beyond that, they concede too many goals. They are sticking to principles that don't really work in this league with the players they have. 4 defeats in the last 5. Lots of goals conceded, including 4 against Newcastle. I think look at the Newcastle game and follow it through here. If Arsenal score in the first 10 minutes, as is shown this season against Palace and West Ham and Sporting Lisbon most notably, they're destroyer. If you can hold them for a while, it might be a tight game. But I think Arsenal will come out the blocks and just blow Ipswich away here. So look at Arsenal winning both halves is the first bet I'd look for here to make any money. Arsenal win, obviously, is the top tip here. And then look at the handicap market. And the handicaps have been a bit cruel recently. So today I'm looking for scoring goals as opposed to handicaps. To score 4+ Arsenal is 2.63. 5 against Palace, 3 against Palace a couple of days before in the Cup, 3 against Monaco. I know the Everton game is an anomaly in that run, but they are scoring goals. So 4 is the first time there's any money to be made at 2.63. I would take that. Arsenal to win both halves and 4 scored at least.
All right, you have your tips, your bets for this Boxing Day, match day. Tom, let's finish the video. Well, before, of course, just remember that you can post your own tips in Oddspedia and even participate in our tipsters competitions. You have here, win $1,000 or euros with Oddspedia thanks to our competitions. There you have. Also, we have a Premier League one, as you can see. And a guy from Nigeria leading. I know in Nigeria they follow a lot the Premier League. Perhaps he is betting on your tips, Tom. Who knows? And of course, you can create your own tipster competition in this case with rivals. There you go. Well, Tom, let's listen to your safe bet.
Safe bet, Liverpool to win against Leicester at home. The odds aren't amazing, but they're going to pump them. So you feel free to throw in some sort of handicap on this game. But safe bet, Liverpool are going to beat Leicester.
Cannot be more safe than this. Perhaps a -1, for instance, and the ACCA.
So there's a couple of safe bets here, but I'm not going to take them because Liverpool and Arsenal make you no money in an ACCA. I've taken a double on 2 teams. There's a risk in it, but I really fancied them. Forest against Tottenham. I think the way Tottenham play will play into Forest's hands and they will win. And I think West Ham are improving at a snail's pace, but they are improving. And Southampton, even with a new manager, they're going to go down. And I'd fancy West Ham to go there and get an all-important win, which might just change the complexion of West Ham's season before games against Liverpool and Man City in the next pair. So Forest and West Ham to win, 4.97. I like that.
Okay, guys. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Enjoy Boxing Day. Merry Christmas. Enjoy your food, your drinks, and plenty of presents, of course. And peace and love and money. Bye.